welcome to this week's edition of Two Up Top. Let's say it again, the weekly football review show with myself, Gav Mack. You've got Alex Osborn and Florian Wolfrum. Yes, he is the man from Leverkusen. Oh yeah, there's our names. That's not Ed, it's Alex. There you are. There's all our names all on the bottom, so you'll be able to see exactly who we are. We're in association with DC Music Services, where we got all our lovely equipment from. Thank you very much. And hopefully, well, we still are in association with Mikkel Sports Bar and Grill, the best boozer in the whole of New York. But hopefully, all this stuff will be over soon, so we can get ourselves over there and have a few beers again with people. How are you, gents? How are you,
okay,
gents?
I'll start.
Go, mate.
Well, definitely we both are polite. I'm fine. I had a great weekend, great football weekend. Can only be satisfied with a win in Mönchengladbach, so looking forward to tonight's show.
We'll be talking about that in a couple of moments. Alex, how's you been?
I'm very well, thank you very much, Gav. Everything's chilled over here. I've got to say, actually, before we go any further, Flo shared in the group chat where he was watching the football yesterday. That setup looked insane.
Yes.
I mean,
I'll tell you what I should have done. I should have got a couple of pictures of that, actually, so we could show our viewers. But
how many different jerseys were there? I imagine they were all mainly Leverkusen, right?
No, I guess there were maybe 250 jerseys. And it's my boss's football room in his house. Luckily, we're quite close friends, so we often watch the matches together, and that's a brilliant setup. And he likes to buy all the new jerseys from the clubs coming new to Bundesliga, so that he can have the table with all the jerseys around the wall.
I did like that. I was a big fan of that.
Me too. Very big fan of that.
And due to his long time work for Bayer Leverkusen, he made contact to many players, especially youth players, because they do an internship or something like that in our company or with the staff. And afterwards, if the contact remains, they'll send him his jerseys, for example, and give them to him as a present.
Brilliant.
So, like Dominic Kor, one of the very good friends from him, so he gave him a lot of Kor jerseys. I don't know, Levin Öztunali, he was his host father. Levin Öztunali came to Leverkusen from Hamburg at the age of 16. And I remember I was in the same school, so he joined me at school. And we finished our A-levels together, and he lived with my boss while we went to school. However, I didn't know my boss at this time. It's just all developed a little later. But that's like Leverkusen, it's a small city, and everyone knows everyone.
Sounds a bit like Northampton, really.
Let's say that.
Let's get into some games from this weekend. We've got to talk about what we've just seen. It was FC Cologne 2, FORTUNA DÜSSELDORF 2. It was a terrible game of football for a very long time, was it not? Let's go to Alex.
I thought so. I mean, I didn't think much was happening at all. And me and Martin were watching it together, and we weren't both really paying attention to it because even the commentary sounded a little bit like it was like, this is a bit boring, isn't it? But without actually saying it on live air. And then they scored a goal just before half-time, Karaman. Trying to come up with funny chants for including his name, but I failed miserably at that. But it was a deflected goal, wasn't it? Which kind of put the keeper on the wrong foot. And even then, when they scored again, as Flo put in the chat, it was a very nice finish, wasn't it? From Eric Tommy? Eric Tommy. And even then, it was still kind of just a bit, almost as if it was strange compared to all the other games. This kind of was played at a bit of a pedestrian pace for German football. And then Cologne got a penalty, had it saved, made a bit of a hash of it, and then
the penalty came to make it 1-1.
Oh, of course it did. Yes, that's right. Yeah, because we said we saw it coming that they would Düsseldorf would then go on and score because that usually happens, isn't it? Like, but what we're trying to say is that right at the end there, the commentator that had. I don't know what the commentary is like over in Germany. I imagine obviously it's German, Flo, but the commentator over here on BT Sport was saying that Cologne have a penchant for scoring late goals, and he made that point about 3 or 4 times.
Kept on saying
going in.
it
He did,
throughout
didn't
the
he? He
whole
said
game, didn't he?
his stat that he kept coming up with was they once the game has gone past the 90th minute, Cologne have scored 6 times over the course of the season, and then obviously Modeste scores, and then they scored again like a couple of minutes later, and he's like, and that's the 7th time that they've scored after the 90th minute. So it was a strange game to me. It was boring, but had lots of incidents. I don't know how that I don't know how that works out.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. But first of all, to come to the commentary, I have to say the commentaries in England are usually way better than Germany.
Oh, okay.
So I guess it doesn't matter what they say it with more emotion and more power than ours. We only have a couple of quite okay commentaries.
I think your goal show is better than ours over here because it just keeps coming up like, oh, there's a goal with a bit of music. Whereas when I lived in Germany, especially watching your goal show, your equivalent of Soccer Saturday, you'll be watching the game and all hear is Tor, Schalke, and it's like, oh, off we go to Schalke to see what's going on. We'll go to Schalke in a minute because there's a couple of goals in that game. But you know, it's a bit like how you watch it on Soccer Saturday on Sky when there's a goal, you hear one of the guys in the studio going, "Oh my God, there's a goal!" Whereas here it's just a little bit of music. So I thought it would be a bit more exciting over in Germany. I've never watched the whole game with German commentary, so.
I've never watched the goal show, so maybe that's something we can share when we meet. We watch the goal show in English and a full German game with German commentary, and I can translate, so that should be a match.
Yeah, let's make it happen. But that was the Rhine Derby, as I said. It was a weird game. I wasn't expecting that to happen, and I was talking to a couple of people throughout that game, and I was mildly disappointed as the game was going ahead, and then next thing you know, everything happens. So crazy stuff. But as I said, I did mention Schalke, so let's go to the Schalke game. Schalke 0, Augsburg 3. Wow, that was not expected in any way, shape or form, was it?
Well, Schalke just continued playing the way they played against Dortmund, I guess, and they were not dangerous enough today. I didn't see any good chance from Schalke, and it was too simple for Augsburg to score the goals. They had a lucky start with a brilliant free kick, so it was very good for their game, for their tactics during the game. And Schalke had no idea how to create any chances. And with those mistakes in the defense, you invite the opponents to score a goal. And from my point of view, the 3-0 is just a logical result, because Augsburg is well known for playing quite. I like the word in English. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But.
So
quite well, they're known for being well organized, and
robust,
being a fighting team,
strong.
and
disciplined.
Disciplined, exactly. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
They are known to be very disciplined, and this is what was their biggest favorite today, or their biggest strength today, and it was enough to beat Schalke. So rough times for Schalke ahead.
It is, Alex. Now, Augsburg make changes, and their changes brought 2 extra goals in the shape of Serenren Baze and Cordova. Schalke made changes by bringing on the kids. How do you think that's going to be looked at by Schalke fans, and is it time for Wagner to be on his way?
Well, I was having this chat before I came on with Martin, and we both kind of agreed that out of the 2 weekends that have been played so far, Schalke have been the worst team as far as we're concerned, and it's not actually even close. And I think I'll put this in the chat. I've yet to be convinced that David Wagner is really a manager. Sometimes you do get assistant managers or backroom staff who can step up into a managerial role. That has happened, but then you get plenty of other examples where it doesn't quite work out. So,
i.e. Paul Clement.
Yeah.
A fantastic assistant manager. Look what he's done with, PSG, Real Madrid, and then is into a full-time job and doesn't really cut the mustard. And I feel that the same has happened with our with Wagner.
Yeah,
it's not really worked for him.
It's not really worked. I mean, it's all well and good coming from a successful backroom staff, but if you haven't got your own philosophy to implement or something that you can get the players to believe in, then you'll get what's happening at Schalke, where it seems a bit that they're trying to play a high pressing system, but when you look at the press, it's a bit disorganised and it's quite easy to play through. And then when you play through it, they look quite at 6s and 7s or all over the place at the back, which makes it quite easy, even for, as Flo said, an organised team and disciplined side in Augsburg would make it look like they were cutting through them at will almost. So I would suggest that maybe Schalke, I don't know off the top of my head whereabouts they are in the table, whether they are safe. I know the top five are kind of broken away, aren't they?
The top five were broken away a couple of weeks ago already. But it's like 6th place is still enough to qualify for Europe, and it's like 3 points away or something like that. So that's not that much. And from my point of view, David Wagner is actually kind of a good coach for Schalke because he understands the spirit of the people in the area around Gelsenkirchen and the Ruhr area, because they're very crazy about football people and they're very impatient. And one of the biggest mistakes of Schalke was always in history to sack their manager and don't give him time to develop a team. They always wanted to see quick results and good results. And for example, I don't know, like it was like 5 or 7 years or even more ago, they played a very great Champions League campaign with a quarterfinal, and they sacked their coach because he was on play 3rd in the league, something like that. So they were always impatient, and it would be a good way to be a little bit more patient with this coach, because he had a couple of young players on the pitch, also a couple of experienced players. But like the 3rd goal where Levent Merkan lost the ball against Cordova was like a typical activity of an unexperienced player. He wasn't looking after the striker. He hadn't a clear first contact, and then he lost the ball. And well, the 3-0 luckily doesn't matter, but those are like the steps you have to make in your development to become a better team without any high financial investigations.
Yeah, okay.
Investment. Yeah.
Now,
so I'll ask a question then. Sorry, Gav. Would you say that the Schalke, if they stick by Wagner, he'll be able to turn it around? Do you think he has the ability to do so? Because I'm not convinced personally.
I would say that Schalke should have to correct the targets, and their target, the official target for this year, was place 8. So if you look at their target, he's absolutely
he's on target.
On the right way. Yeah, he is on target. But if they would make smaller steps, I can imagine that Wagner can, by given enough time, develop this team. Maybe not to top 4 in the next 2 years, but maybe if it's place 6 or place 5, this is also a place which would be a great fit for Schalke.
Well, Augsburg didn't mess around with their jibes towards Schalke, and unfortunately for the audio listeners via anchor.fm/TUTF, you won't be able to see this. So I'll suggest that you go to our YouTube channel and have a look at this. This is what they did. They changed their Twitter for their plans and 2020. And I think it's probably one of the most savage things. But then again, I always find that German Twitter is super savage. And, that's what they did. And I love it. Let's finish off with Sunday's games. And it was Mainz 0, Leipzig 5. Wow. So it was an absolutely crazy result for them. However, that is now, let me just get the graphic for that one. There we are. That is now an aggregate score of 13-0 against Mainz this season. Timo Werner scored a hat-trick today, and that is 9 goals he's been directly involved in 2 games against Mainz. 2 hat-tricks, 3 assists. Bearing in mind, Werner hadn't actually scored for 9 games before this game. And Leipzig's results of late, that's now 14 points from a possible 27. Are Leipzig back in the running now, would you say, after that result? Is that what they needed in order to kick on and try and get the next 7 games through hopefully win a title, in their opinion?
Absolutely, I think, because during the last week there were many questions raised in the media whether they are not able to take their chances, but I guess the match today impressively showed that they are able to. And looking at the next opponents they don't have that big opponents anymore. They played against all the top 5 teams except Dortmund.
Yeah, I was going to say Dortmund left in the top 8 that they've got to play against.
So I guess they have kind of the best chances to qualify for Champions League again. But I don't believe, or I can't imagine them to be so good to finish as champion this year. I guess this will be played between Dortmund and Munich.
Which is the big game on Tuesday. And myself and Flo, I'm not quite sure if Alex is going to be able to join in with us on Wednesday night. But Wednesday, after the fixtures, we are going to review all those games from the midweek, including that massive Die Klassiker, which could have giant ramifications on what's happening in the top half of the table. Yusuf Poulsen, I didn't realise he had actually been there for that long. I knew he'd been there for a while, but that was his 250th game for the club. He is the record appearance holder. He's actually there in the 3rd tier as well, wasn't he? He got a goal, which is great to mark such an occasion. How do you think his presence has been viewed by the Leipzig, fraternity?
I think that he is quite important for them because he does a lot of work on the pitch. He's the best goal scorer for them. Like, he's obviously in the shadow of Timo Werner, and he's not the most creative player, but he's maybe the most underrated player in the Leipzig system because he does lots of work. He has a huge physical power, and from my point of view, he's really, really important, and is a very important player also to switch in the front 3 they have, because they have a huge quantity of high qualified player in their attacking department.
What are your thoughts on Leipzig, Alex?
So my thoughts on Leipzig are, out of the top 5 teams that I've watched, I think Leipzig have a lot of potential, but I see them very, very on a very similar level to Leverkusen. And
no offense.
For me, I think the difference in where they will finish will be the key players for them. So for me, obviously, Kai Havertz, the key player for Leverkusen, and Timo Werner, the key player for Leipzig. And I fancy Leverkusen actually to pit Leipzig in the table, probably finishing the best of the rest behind Dortmund and Munich. Because we were having this discussion previously, me and Martin think that probably Kai Havertz is the best player in the Bundesliga. I would think he is.
I've had a lot of time for him anyway, and I was watching a lot of Bundesliga way before every other English fan decided to jump on the bandwagon because it's the only live football that's on. But to see him again, it's like, wow, you are actually the man, because he's got the height, he's got the size, he's got the strength. I'll tell you what. Why don't we talk about Leverkusen? We'll bring back Monday's game, which was Werder Bremen 1, Bayer Leverkusen 4. That was from Monday. So Kai Havertz bagged a brace in that game, a couple of headers which were very, very tidy. Flo is the Leverkusen man, but I just want to go back to Kai Havertz. To Alex and Derenby, because I know you're a big fan of him, and Bellarabi.
Derenby, to me, I just feel like he's a bit of a silky operator. Just from the way he's played in midfield, I can see he's someone who seems to control tempo quite well, but he can also be. He's played some lovely incisive passing, defence splitting passing as well. And I was led to believe that Kai Havertz was your attacking midfielder. They were all saying he's the heir to Özil, he's the new Mesut Özil. He's gonna take over his position in the German national side.
They say it's a hybrid between Ballack and Özil, don't they?
Exactly. Yeah.
But in these last 2 games, and Flo, you hopefully you can correct me here. Him playing the spearhead in attack. Whether it's been kind of, I'm trying to work out whether it's kind of like one of those false nine situations where he is the centre forward, but he kind of withdraws, and you've got your two wide players coming in. So was it Moussa Diaby, and is it sort of Bellarabi, isn't it, on the other side as well? Kind of like Liverpool with Firmino as your spearhead, but then withdrawing, and you've got Mane and Salah coming in from the wings, which is why I thought Kai Havertz would actually be a pretty good spot to go to Liverpool, because I think he would improve upon Roberto Firmino for me.
Do you honestly believe that? Do you think that?
Yeah, I do. I do. He's taller. He's taller. He's stronger. He's younger. And he has bags more potential than Firmino for me.
That's the thing. Bearing in mind that he is only 20 years old. So the fact that he's only 20, do you feel that this is no offence to him? And I'm not digging out like Leverkusen fans, by the way. So Flo, don't think that I'm kicking off at you. But I think he's a fantastic footballer. There's no denying about it. But is he one of those players that could be a bit more of a flash? So give it another season. Everyone understands what his game is. Everyone knows what he's going to do. So therefore, he's not going to have as much impact.
I certainly don't think so. I mean, he's been playing. This is what, his third or fourth season now in the Bundesliga. So he'd have had that difficult potential second season where he's made his debut. You know, people have been caught off guard by him. Then they can then sort of prepare for him, and he's now kicked on again. So to me, that suggests a player that is not gonna be satisfied with where he got. You know, some players, they can have an excellent start to their career and they fade away because they think they've made it, right? It doesn't appear to me that Kai Havertz is that kind of character, should we say. And I certainly think that this guy, he could probably be whatever he wants to be, really. I certainly think so.
I'm absolutely with Alex, because already during his youth academy days, Kai Havertz was told to be the next German national player from Bayer Leverkusen. You know, when he was 15 or 16, the people told him, "You'll be the next one playing national team," and there was lots of pressure on him. However, he managed to win under 17 German championship, straight got to our first team afterwards, and it's his 5th season now for Leverkusen. So he had a great development, and what I really like most about him is not like scoring goals. He's top in the front three as a false nine, but he has a magical first contact with the ball.
Yeah,
his first, he always knows what he does, and he has also some first contact passes that are great, that are so important, and that's the reason why I see him rather behind a good striker, like we had with Kevin Volland, or like a striker who loves to play with him, than in the center, then as a center forward for all time. Well, I believe that if he has a good striker before him, he can even be more efficient.
Well, yeah, when you mentioned about his first touch, I think that he proved himself with that first touch, with a lovely first-time finish in the game at the weekend, which is Borussia Mönchengladbach 1, Bayer Leverkusen 3. Now, Dortmund were on the telly at the same time, but had no intention of watching any other game than this one. This is for me personally, the feature match. 3rd versus 5th, so much on it. It only takes a couple of slip-ups from Bayern Munich, which can happen, and we'll talk about Bayern in a few moments, to allow a side like, well, one of these two teams, as far as I was concerned, I thought the winner of this game would be the next challenger towards Dortmund, towards Leipzig, you know, and the loser of this game would be looking at a top 4 finish rather than potential title winning side. And Havertz, the first goal was truly beautiful. It was lovely the way he took that. There was also, I'll put a little typo in there again. I'm so bad at the old typo. There was Thuram who scored to make it. Did he equalise? Did he?
He equalised, yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, as well. Me, I'll put the timing wrong because Havertz scored a penalty not long after. That should be 56, I think, 57.
Yeah, I guess the equaliser was like 51, 52, and 3 or 4 minutes later.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I needed to change that.
Penalty happened.
Nay, bother. Hey, look, we're not getting paid for this, so who cares? And then Sven Bender, he was the guy who scored a header from the set piece, which is a beautifully taken header. Like he leapt above everybody else. I loved Lars Bender as well. I loved them both. I thought they were both great players. He could play centre back, they could play centre mid, they could play in the holding role, they could sweep. You know, they're both very, very talented players.
But unfortunately, they're both very often very hurt. So that even in training sessions, they go in a situation where it hurts, and that's maybe one of the reasons why they're hurt so much.
Mm-hmm.
And we always made fun of them, and we said when we signed Sven Bender, okay, no, we have 2 half benders, maybe they can make one matching bender for our game, because Bender is so important. They have such a huge mentality, and they're kind of next to Harvard's the most important players for our game, because they always make us better and make the other players better with their mentality. And also his goal from Sven Bender wasn't even with the head; it was with the shoulder.
Yeah,
it's like a typical Sven Bender goal, where he just wanted to score that damn goal with all possible options, and he did it. And luckily for us, we won against Gladbach.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. Just mentioned about Gladbach before we move on, that they took off Thuram. He looked quite menacing.
He's the guy there, isn't he?
He was causing Leverkusen a few problems at the back. I know it was a well-taken goal as well. It was quite an emphatic finish into the bottom corner, and there was he created a couple of other opportunities that Gladbach didn't really take advantage of, and I'm a bit surprised that they took him off with about 15 minutes to go, to be honest with you.
I didn't understand that either, because I don't know, Thuram's like a phenomenon for me. He has huge strength, and he has such a big ass. However, he's one of the fastest players in Bundesliga. I don't know how that does fit together, but it obviously does. And as we've seen with his goal, or a big chance afterwards, Alexander Dragovic had not many chances against him. So couldn't understand that change. But yeah, I don't know. Coach must have had some idea in mind.
Yeah.
It confused me somewhat, and it was when it was still 1-0, and Kai Havertz sort of like rounded the keeper sort of thing, and he found Derembai, and he must have thought he had all the time in the world just to slot it home, and somehow Elvedi put his foot in the way and blocked the shot that was on the line, and I was like, how the hell did you do that? How did that happen? But that was that could have made it 2-0, and at that point it would have just been game over. Off we go. Thank you very much for the 3 points. But it was much more exciting than that, and I thought it was a very good game. Let's move on to the shock of the weekend, in my opinion, and that was Freiburg 0, Bremen 1. Who predicted that result before the game?
I guess no one, but it's typical for Freiburg this year. They make some crazy good points against the top 5 teams, but they also lose their home matches against the teams from the relegation zone. They lost against Düsseldorf. They lost against KOLN in the beginning of the season when they were at the very bottom of the table. They lost, I believe, against Paderborn or something like that. They struggled. They just drawed. So they lose their points against the bad teams and win them against the good teams. It's crazy situation for Freiburg at the moment. You can't expect anything from them. Expect the unexpected, maybe.
Yeah, they lost me money at the weekend, so I'm not very happy about it. You know. I'm not bitter in any way, shape, or form. But Werder Bremen, look, we spoke about Werder last week, about their fall from grace, and there was one player who I mentioned who is a little bit good, who I've got a lot of time for, and it was him who got the one and only goal. It was Leonardo Bittencourt. What is he doing at Bremen? Did he think he was going to be part of a movement to help Bremen go back to the old days, or is he just trying to take a pay packet?
I guess in last summer when he changed to Bremen, they were in a very good way. They finished 7th or 8th in the Bundesliga last year, and they said very offensively that they want to play in Europe or qualify to Europe for the next year. And that didn't happen, as we know. This won't happen, as we all know. But I guess his intentions were to play Europe with Bremen, maybe put them back on top. But the responsible person in Bremen totally underestimated the bad defense of the team and the bad development of this season.
Yeah, and Freiburg, they could have actually got a point at the end, but good old pal VAR got in the way. Manuel Gulda thought he scored 2-2, but his goal was chalked off VAR. Now, do you think it was the right decision to chalk that goal off? It's tight, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is correct, but no one would have said anything if there wouldn't have been VAR. So
yeah, and sometimes you've got to use common sense refereeing, in my opinion, and that's what. But then that's what VAR is there for. There was a red card in that game for Werder Bremen, and it was a second yellow for Bergfreder. I don't know why he was making that sort of challenge with only a couple of minutes to go. The player wasn't going anywhere, but things fry your brain, do they not? Right. Where else do we need to go? Oh, Friday night's game, the Berlin derby. Hertha Berlin 4, Union Berlin 0. Alex, did you get a chance to watch that game?
I caught parts of it, yeah. As Flo said, the Berlin clubs aren't so well, haven't got as much tradition as some of the other clubs in Germany due to various factors there. He did mention about how Hertha had a new owner who wanted to come in and shake things up and get them to start behaving like a big club in a big city. Now, Gav mentioned about Union Berlin having a lot of older players in their squad, the average age being quite one of the oldest ones in the Bundesliga. Yeah, and I certainly didn't see this as a 4-0, but I always had a feeling that I thought Hertha were going to win, mainly because just from my fairly basic knowledge of German football, Hertha Berlin have got a higher reputation than Union Berlin, and with good reason. This is Union Berlin's first season in the Bundesliga, but I certainly didn't see 4-0 coming, especially off the back of Hertha's performance in the first game. But they've bounced back quite nicely, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, like Flo, at half time when it's 0-0. would you have put any money on a 4-0 win for Hertha Berlin?
Not on a 4-0, but I'm with Alex that I always had the impression also before the game that this derby will be a Hertha Berlin derby, because as you already said, Union Berlin is always the underdog this year, and it seems that Bruno Labbadia is pulling the right strings with Hertha.
Yeah.
And but maybe it's just because his players are afraid of him. Because I don't know if you've ever known or ever heard about this, but there were rumors that at his while he was coach in Hamburg, I don't know, 10 years ago, he slept with one of the players' wives. So he's like the John Terry of coaches in Germany.
Do you know what? Right, I knew there was something else because I knew of him as a player. It weren't really my era as such. We didn't have Bundesliga football on our telly much when he was a pro. But I knew his name from somewhere or from some form of scandal, but I didn't know it was as deep as that. I mean, wow.
Well, it's just rumors, but I guess it's kind of true. It's my impression that it's true.
I was going to say the rumor has to start from somewhere, and I can imagine him at the time. He's not exactly the worst looking guy. I can imagine him be on a few posters of older ladies, and
yeah, his nickname always was the Pretty Bruno. That's his nickname in Germany.
There you go. I think it's the Mönchengladbach gaffer. Me and my missus were watching the game the other day, and he popped up on the screen, and she was like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Who's that? Who's what?" And I decided to have a little look myself, and I was thinking, to be fair, I wouldn't mind myself. So, not that I'm that way inclined, but he's a good looking guy. Anyway, goal scorers. Ibisevic, another old man. He scored just a couple of minutes after half time. And I was thinking, right, okay, at least we've got some excitement. And I'm still watching the highlight of that goal, and next thing you know, it's 2-0, and I couldn't believe it. But Luca Bacchio, he was awful that whole game until he scored, and then he looked like a world beater. Every time the ball touched him, it was bouncing off into next week. You know, he was making runs in the wrong direction. He was awful. But then to round the goalkeeper and slot it home nicely like that, fair play to you. My boy Cunha bagged again, and then Dedrick Boyata, ex-Man City, with a header. It's the thing with well, I'm quite surprised that Boyata was featured in this game, because I didn't realise he got in a bit of trouble last week for ignoring the social distancing methods and decided to kiss another player when they scored. So it was, well, I sort of did notice it, and they were like, "Oh, they're not really respecting social distancing and whatever." But yeah, Dedrick Boyata makes his own rules up. But Hertha, they're looking like they could potentially go on a bit of a run. You know, their running doesn't look too bad. Union Berlin, they're safe, would you say?
I won't say they're safe,
No.
because we had a
I
couple
agree.
of experiences in Germany that clubs which seemed to be safe, like 7 or 8 matches to go, suddenly had a streak of losses and got relegated. It happened to Frankfurt 4 years ago. It happened to Stuttgart 3 years ago. They all seem to be safe, and suddenly you lose 2 or 3 games. You get like you're struck in negative in a negative way, and you can't change. You don't find the stick or the thing to push to go in the right direction.
Mm.
So they should be very
Absolutely.
careful.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as I know I said Schalke, I thought have been the worst team over the 2 weekends so far. Union Berlin have been kind of there with them. Not as bad, but I don't really see the quality necessary there to stay in the league full time, if that makes sense. I don't. If they're going to survive this year, it might be right because they've scraped it somehow. But I certainly don't see them surviving much longer than that. Really.
No, their
Yeah,
team's way too old to sustain
Yeah.
any form of future. They need to start looking at, you know, maybe look at fringe players of the bigger clubs around Europe. If I don't know what their money's like, Flo, do you know what their cash flow's like at Union Berlin?
they and Paderborn, they are the clubs with the less money in the Bundesliga. So they have very little money. Also because they come from East Berlin, you know, Germany are really struggling, and they don't have that big sponsors. So I guess for them it's really difficult to gain new, young, and promising players. They need to take that what's left over by the big clubs maybe, or by the other clubs in the league. That's why they also have so many old players in their team. And maybe another point why I think it can be very complicated for them is that their biggest strength, their fans at home at Alte Försterei, aren't there to support them anymore. And we see a development in the Bundesliga right now that away teams are winning more and more games. Like this match day, there were like two home wins, something like that. So not that much.
Well, that's a lovely lead, because I wanted to go into the final away win that I wanted to talk about. There's still a couple more games to go, and that was Wolfsburg 0, Dortmund 2. But before I start with that, you are right on that. So game day 26, out of the 9 games, there were 5 away wins, and there was I had actually written down that there were 6 away wins on game day 27, but Cologne ended up bringing it back, so that ended up being a draw. But that's still a majority of away wins than home wins. So the home advantage isn't there for teams like Cologne, for teams like Paderborn, for teams like Union Berlin, that rely teams like Schalke that rely heavily on like an ultra sort of sounding atmosphere to intimidate the away team. It's just a couple of shouts from the crowd.
It's not just that. It's just the feeling that players get playing in front of their own crowd. You know, when you've got people cheering you on, you feel in a better place, don't you? You're in more familiar surroundings. You've got an atmosphere which is conducive to you being encouraging. Even if players don't need that motivation, they say that they don't. It is still a motivating thing, isn't it? To want to do well for your own fans watching you in your own stadium. Now, now that's taken away, I would be interested to know out of these two weekends, those victories that have come about. Because it seems like even though they're playing at the opposition stadium, it's almost like they're playing at a neutral venue, right?
Yeah.
And usually when you play a neutral venue, it kind of that levels the playing field a bit, doesn't it? In terms of any advantages, home advantage, away advantage, whatever. It'd be interesting to know out of those 10 victories the away teams have been, would those 10 victories would have happened anyway? If that makes sense, were they the better team? Were they the better team? Is there any correlation between that and?
I'll look at, for instance, this weekend. I haven't got last week's results to hand directly, but I'll look at Augsburg. Would I expect Augsburg to win away from home? No. I'd expect Leipzig to win away from home, 100%. Would I expect Werder Bremen to win? No. You know, and I know that Freiburg can be the surprise package where they beat the bigger teams, as Flo alluded to. They'll beat the bigger teams and lose to the lesser teams, but I would still expect Freiburg to win that game, especially with their fans and everyone behind them and a decent start. Because to be fair, the first 15 minutes of that Freiburg game, for instance, it was all Freiburg. And it was a goal on the break, which was a lovely move, which brought the goal along. But then their fans, once they go 1-0 down, they wouldn't start effing and jeffing and booing and stuff. They'll get behind them and give it a good old rally. And I feel that would give them the momentum. Teams haven't got that anymore. And I don't think Wolfsburg would have made much of a difference at the weekend. But, I know that the Wolfsburg crowd can be quite raucous, like any crowd in the Bundesliga. Wolfsburg 0, Bundesliga 2. Borussia Dortmund 2. The goals from Guerrero and Hakimi, the two wing-backs. Flo, talk to me about that game.
I just saw the highlights of that match. So, and what I heard from German football talk shows is that wasn't the most exciting match from Borussia Dortmund's side, but they are so dangerous and they seem to be so constant at the moment that they are quite an interesting runner-up for champions, for becoming champions. So I guess they found their form at the very right time for a great game against Bayern Munich, and they have two very, very good fullbacks on the left and right side with Guerrero and Hakimi. I just saw a statistic this week that they have actually more goals and assists combined than Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Thank you. Can everyone stop getting off Liverpool for a hot minute and talk about these two, because these two are the real. Carry on.
As a Liverpool fan, I have to say no, but these two are definitely the best fullbacks in Bundesliga at the moment. And as you can see, everyone's focusing on Haaland, and for a reason, of course. But having these two in the background and always pushing from behind, that's a huge strength for Dortmund. That's a point that could make a difference maybe against Bayern Munich on Tuesday.
Don't you love that Borussia Dortmund have got so much strength everywhere? They've got goals all over the park. Is that a cat?
No, I think it's somebody's child just shouting in the background.
Oh, okay. Let's crack on. The joys of this, when we're back in the studio, it won't really matter so much. So, Alex, the thought that Dortmund have got goals from everywhere. So that's really distracting.
It was, wasn't it?
It is, yeah.
That's really, yeah, shut up. So as Flo said, all the goals, all the focus, was on Haaland. So the fact that goals are coming from the likes of Julian Brandt, Torgan Hazard, your fullbacks, the strength in depth at Dortmund is amazing, isn't it?
They, excuse me, they have got a number of different threats coming from all over the field, and you add to another one from there, Jadon Sancho, who came back into, well, saw a bit of action anyway, came off the bench, I believe, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So just in time for him to get some minutes in against Bayern. Whether he's going to start or not, I don't know, but they certainly have a number of different threats.
He looks horrible, Sancho. With his hair and his beard.
Oh, right, yeah.
We're not talking about Barnet. So I imagine that the hairdressers open it again in Leverkusen, are they? Because your hair looks quite nice today.
As you can see, they opened 2 or 3 weeks ago already, but I didn't get an appointment, so I had to wait a very long time, way too long time. I looked horrible, and I'm very happy that I'm back in shape again. Yeah.
There's a reason why I wear a hat. Jadon Sancho is actually contributed 30 goals this season, directly contributed. So that's goals and assists directly, including the assist for Hakimi's second.
Yes, Sancho and Havertz are definitely the hottest two players in Bundesliga, or have been the hottest two players in Bundesliga this year so far.
And they're both 20 years old.
Yeah. If he comes back to strength and if he's fit again, he definitely is a player who needs to be on the first 11 side in every game for Dortmund, or in every important game, because he always makes a difference with his agility, with his pace, with his skills, and his strength in scoring goals.
I'm really, really looking forward to the game at the weekend. Tuesday. Keep getting confused on what day's what.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating battle, isn't it? I was having this discussion with Martin, and we were thinking, can Dortmund realistically, can they topple Bayern Munich? And we think, unfortunately, we both think that Bayern Munich, and I say unfortunately, hopefully that won't incite any Bayern Munich fans, but for the sake of wanting another team to actually win the Bundesliga and being a bit of change there, we can't really see Bayern Munich slipping up.
No, the fact that Bayern, they won 14 of their last 15 games. If Dortmund do beat them on Tuesday, they'll still be a point clear, so they're still in the driving seat. I can't see Bayern being toppled. We'll go there. Let's go there. So it was Bayern Munich 5, Eintracht Frankfurt 2.
3 goals by Hinteregger.
3 goals by Hinteregger. It reminds me a lot. I think it was Frank Sinclair back in the day. He scored two Oggies and a goal at the right end to make it. To bring it back to 2-2 after putting them down. But, Leon Goretzka with a very, very Lampard-esque goal to take the lead. They had already battered Frankfurt into submission anyway by that point. Thomas Müller, it was kind of a decent finish. He beat the offside trap.
It's a typical
I would say that
Müller
was a very
finish.
Thomas Müller kind of goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It didn't look good, but somehow it was difficult to manage. He still did it, and I don't know. It's a typical Müller. Yeah, which made it good.
It's. Do you know? He reminds me. He reminds me of kind of like a smaller version of Peter Crouch, where you kind of see his like all arms and all legs, and yet he somehow scores a goal, and you're like, he made that look really awkward, but it was like a 8-yard finish. Do you know what I mean? From like just outside the 6-yard box.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was a very typical Thomas Müller kind of and celebration as well the old and the
The Corona celebrations are made for Thomas Müller, because he's like always, if he scores a goal, he's celebrating for his own, like, yeah. And only a couple of seconds later, his teammates are coming. They have to leave him alone at first.
I didn't realise I need to celebrate with you as well. Lewandowski scored just after half-time with a header, classic Lewandowski. But then things changed. And it was a corner for Frankfurt, and it was headed in by Hinteregger. What was going on with the Bayern defence there? Because they all just seemed to stand still at that point, and I was a little bit was a little bit concerned by that, but I thought, that's all right. But then 3 minutes later, they get another corner and Hinteregger's there again.
Maybe they were a little too sure with that comfortable lead, and they weren't that concentrated at the corner. As you could see, Hinteregger had 2 touches. He had his first touch with the head, and later the second touch with the feet to score a goal. What definitely may not happen or must not happen to a top team or to a champion. So that's a good point for them or an important point for them to improve until next Tuesday. But we should not forget that Hinteregger is one of the most dangerous defenders at corners. So he has already scored 8 goals, I believe, this year.
He scored 8 goals or something this year.
Eintracht Frankfurt top scorer.
That's sad, isn't it? Like when your defender is your top goal. It's a bit like Newcastle, isn't it? Bayern put the game to bed pretty much to make it 4-2 with Alphonso Davies. The clearance was awful and terrible decision making by Gelson Fernandes. What was he thinking? Like why not just put a foot through it? I'm confused.
I believe he can't even answer himself. It looked ridiculous what he was just doing. Like Hinteregger's own goal at the final of the game.
I think that was quite harsh. There was a lot of pressure from substitute Serge Gnabry, and I don't think there was much that he could do about that. So I did feel a little bit sorry for him. The final game, and we left it to last for a reason, was Paderborn 1, Hoffenheim 1. Say for a reason. The first half was actually quite entertaining. There was a lot going on, especially the first 10 minutes. The first goal from Skov, great finish, and then Serebny as well to make it 1 apiece with just 10 minutes gone. And at this point,
I was going to say, Gav, you mentioned about in the last game there, what was Gelson Fernandes thinking? What was that defender thinking in this game? I think it's like, do you know what it reminded me of? It's like when you play FIFA and you have a glitch and it stops the player, and then all of a sudden he just wakes back up again and the ball's like drifted off like a few yards, isn't it?
I
and
agree.
it's like,
but you've got to think of the finish. Your man's what?
That was a lovely finish. I mean, it was really straight. He's taken it early, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's taken it early, and in those situations, you're probably thinking, just take it on towards the goal to give yourself an easier chance from closer in. But he's obviously put it away with plumb. It's just that defender. What happened? He just stopped functioning for a moment there.
Funny thing is that Akpogoma became a substitute because he made 3 horrible mistakes last week, and now the new man on the pitch, Bicacic, did even more horrible mistakes. A lot of work to do for the Hoffenheim coach with his defense, I guess.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. But this is why I've always said I love German football, because there's always goals, And it's quite funny, the game that we watched earlier on today, the KOLN DÜSSELDORF, the Rhineland derby, they were banging on about how many goals are scored, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking, this has got 0-0 written all over it. You're going to wind me up with a 0-0. But there was then 4 goals in that game. That's what I mean. So there's always goals. There's always entertainment.
But just in the Bundesliga.
Drama.
Not
in the Bundesliga.
Not in the second league. Second Bundesliga is horrible.
Yeah.
Today we had top game, first against second, Bielefeld, Hamburg. And it was like typical second Bundesliga, 0-0. Incredibly boring.
It's hard to watch.
It's very hard to watch.
We've only got limited ways of viewing those games over here, but I choose not to look at those. They're legal streams. They're via betting websites and things like that. You can watch it. So like Karlsruhe were on the other week, Gruerturt, they were on a couple of weeks ago, like Hanover. But it's just not easy to watch on the eye at all. You would have seen a few of our social media links come along at the bottom of the screen, but before we go, we want to show you the Bundesliga table. Oh no, they're the fixtures for next week. I didn't get them. I didn't get the table because it was just before the game, but as you know, we all know what's going on in there. So the fixtures this week on Tuesday, we've got the 5:30 game in the UK. We're going UK time, so Flo, just tell your mates it's an hour on top of what we say. So the halb sechs game. See my German? I'm very good at it. Dortmund versus Bayern on Tuesday night, and then Tuesday at 7:30 you got Leverkusen versus Wolfsburg, Frankfurt versus Freiburg, Bremen versus Mönchengladbach. Wednesday evening 5:30 we've got Leipzig versus Hertha Berlin, and then the evening games we've got Hoffenheim versus Cologne, Düsseldorf versus Schalke, Augsburg versus Paderborn, and Union Berlin versus Mainz. And now I understand what you're saying about our Union Berlin safe, because if Union Berlin lose that game, then that that puts Mainz in a stronger position and brings Union Berlin more into a relegation scrap.
But can you imagine Mainz winning after this performance today?
Yes, do you know what? I can. And the reason why is because it happened in the Premier League. Alex, Southampton.
I was just about to say I can actually see Mainz, even though they had a poor performance today. I still see enough about their team going forwards than I did over Union Berlin.
Yeah. Union Berlin worry me. It looks like their formation. I think they try and play a certain formation, but really and truly, it is like a 4-5-1 with a sole man through the middle who's not very, very good. So with that, I just think.
I mean, just looking at the league table now, I mean, Union Berlin, I think what saved them is that they've actually got a fairly decent defence. I mean, they've conceded out of all the teams around them, they've conceded the least amount of goals. But conversely, they've also scored very little as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of if you want to get out of a relegation zone or relegation battle, you need to score goals, okay? Because you're going to concede. You are going to concede because you're not a very good team, so you're going to have to prepare to concede some goals. But if you don't score goals, you don't give yourself. It's Michael Owen saying you don't give yourself a chance to win the game. And unfortunately, I just can't see Union Berlin scoring enough to keep them out of trouble. Or if they do somehow scrape it, then it's going to be by the skin of their teeth. I mean, how does it work again? It's the bottom two go down automatically, and then the third team who finishes bottom then plays a playoff against the team who finished third in the Bundesliga 2. Yeah. Okay. So
Exactly.
I mean, they've got a 6-point gap between them and Düsseldorf, who are in that position right now. That's not enough for me at all.
We'll see how that pans out. You've been watching or you might have been listening via Anchor.fm to the Bundesliga review, the Game Day 27 review. Myself, Gav Mack, Alex Osborn, and Flo Wolfrum. Before we go, we've got a few shout-outs that we need to give. I'll need to give a big shout-out to FTLOL for the love of lists. They're a podcast as well. They do long lists of, top 10s of what they've had recently. Best international teams of all time, top 10 Brazilians. Absolutely brilliant watch. You need to make sure, listen, I should say, because they're audio. Make sure you give them a good old listen. You've also got the Bundesliga show coming on Wednesday night. We've got our top 5s in 5 midfield coming on Thursday. It's all going down. All our social media links as well. So, Alex, I don't know where to point, but I'm just going to...
Just point. Somewhere on the screen will appear a point where you can click to subscribe to the channel, and also some other content that we produced as well. So yeah, at any position on the screen if you want.
It's so difficult looking at a screen and looking at that screen over there. I'm just pointing. Stick up my face. Yeah, just stick up my face. That's easier. But all our social media links at 2UpTopFootball on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You'll find us on that way. And if you want to listen to us, you'll see it on all our social media links. It is anchor.fm/TUTF. Thank you, everybody, and good night.